was staying in South Africa, where the government seems poised towards ensuring Nigerians are resident in the country and Nigerian tourists get some impressive benefits. President Cyril Ramaphosa says tourists from Nigeria can now apply for a visa without submitting a passport, and Nigerian investors and tourists can now get as much as a 5-year multiple entry visa under simplified processes. President Ramaphosa made these plans known to President Bola Tinubu in Cape Town at the 11th session of the Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission. TVC News State House correspondent Femi Akonde reports.
This kind of meeting between Nigeria and South African leaders usually has far-reaching implications. The two countries are among Africa's biggest economic powerhouses. The two leaders share a personal and mutually special relationship. President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will fully support Nigeria's bid to join the G20 and improve trade ties between the two countries.
The African Continental Free Trade Area will allow our two countries to trade in a more seamless manner across a variety of products. And this is the time for us to seize the opportunity to begin robust trading between Nigeria and South Africa.
The visiting Nigerian president reminisced on the bilateral relationship that exists between both countries. President Bola Tinubu, however, acknowledged that there are some rough edges that should be smoothened up. Historically, the relationship between Nigeria and South Africa has often been categorized under 3 major pillars: conflict, cooperation, and competition. The relationship, however, has been strained by long-standing tensions, particularly as relating to both countries' aspirations to play a more decisive leadership role on the continent.
We must ensure that the spirit of the collaboration and cooperation between our two leading countries in Africa will intensify and deepen under our leadership of our respective nations. This is not a matter of choice, but of destiny that includes an historical responsibility that we hold the African people.
Here, President Bola Tinubu seeks to start a new phase for Africa's largest economies, as both presidents discuss the benefits of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and the role of international finance institutions on the continent, also cooperation in the mining and telecom sector. Nigeria needs South Africa's cooperation to secure full membership in the G20 and BRICS, along with participation in the BRICS New Development Bank. Femi Akonde, TVC News.
Now, for more on Nigeria-South Africa relations, the CEO, Little Network Africa, Chukwuma Okenwa, joins me from our Abuja studios. While a professor of international law, Ademola Abbas, also joins me from the Federal Capital Territory via Zoom. Good to have you both join us on The World Now. But let me begin with you, Mr. Okenwa. We seem to be seeing very strategic movement and visits in Africa. First of all, President Biden is in Africa. We're also seeing this meeting now between President Bola Tinubu and President Cyril Ramaphosa. How strategic, especially for the one happening in South Africa, is that particular meeting? Mr. Okenwa, did you get the question? All right, Prof, if you can hear me, let me pose a question to you. Looks like we're having a challenge there with Mr. Okenwa.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Precious. Yeah, it's a very important question. Well, number one, is very interesting that President Biden, decided to come to Angola towards the tail end of his administration, which is sub-Saharan Africa. Well, number one, it shows that he's going to sit basically a lame duck president, so to say, and he's still making his impact felt on the global stage. We're talking about President Tinubu in South Africa. I didn't think it could be any more strategic for Nigeria and South Africa to collaborate at this particular time. And you must know that South Africa is the only African country that is a member of the G20. Basically, it's also a member of BRICS, as you are aware. Nigeria is not a member. Of course, Nigeria participated in the G20 summit that just finished in Rio de Janeiro at the invitation of the President of Brazil. Now, incidentally, South Africa has taken over now as the president of G20, and Nigeria is making a bid to be member of G20. So, number one, from global policies, from diplomatic relations point of view, Nigeria's visit to South Africa is very, very important because South Africa is going to be pushing, obviously, for Nigeria to be accepted as a member of G20. Don't forget, these are the two biggest economies that we have in the African continent. That is number one. Number two, those two countries are very critical players within the forte of the African Union, within the fold of the African Union. And Nigeria is calling on South Africa, for instance, is relying on South Africa to support the appointment of the Nigerian, who is currently the Commissioner for Peace and Security and Political Affairs in Addis Ababa, in the African Union. So Nigeria is relying on that. Again, Nigeria also, like South Africa, is going to be pushing to become a permanent member of the Security Council, of the United Nations. Of course, having both of them are quite interested in it. Whichever of the countries is going to be pushing forward, we know we have the backing of the other. So from all those perspectives, it's extremely critical and very, very important for Nigeria and South Africa to begin to collaborate now. And I'm sure we're still going to go into the area of commerce in terms of how both of them can explore investment opportunity between the two countries. And it's a very, very strategic relationship that I think is been strengthened between the two countries at the moment.
All right, so let me bring in Mr. Kaiwa back into the conversation. I believe he can hear me now. Mr. Kaiwa, and Prof has touched on how strategic this particular meeting is, and just renewing relations between both countries, because it's been a bit combative recently with all of the fracas we see between citizens of both countries. But in terms of collaboration, how important is this when we look to boost the international profile and global perception of the continent? All right, so we seem to not have...
Mr. Kyle, is it?
Okay, I think there's a delay. All right, go ahead.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. So what I could say, in terms of the potentials for this collaboration, is that it's going to be a new wave of the spirit of Africa, Pan-Africanism, where Africans could take a lead from the very fact that two countries long known for conflict and competition, it's now ready to do more of collaboration. And I think what is really very outstanding this time around is the commitment to go beyond signing of MOUs, to put in action, and most importantly, the issue of granting access, without all of the bottlenecks of having to submit passports for weeks. And now Nigerian investors and businessmen could just apply just for maybe an ET, electronic travel authorization, and is able to have access to Source Nation. Is going to reawake that level of collaboration, because at the moment, as we discuss on the global platform of the inability of Africa to trade, as much as they should, part of the bottlenecks over the time has been that intra-trade ability of African countries to trade among themselves has been low and has also been on the decline. Like about 2 years ago, it was about 15% compared to the entire trade volume with other countries beyond Africa, and has even further declined to somewhere around slightly above 13%, right? So some of this is going to have a situation where if you take away the bottlenecks, like we know when Dangote pointed out that a French investor coming into Africa have more access. He requires less visa, less of those documentation than he his own self, who is, an African investor. So this is quite commendable and the right step in the right direction.
And I'm staying with you, Mr. Kaiwa, because the special advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, released a statement of the President's speech, and I did go through some part of it. I must confess that it was really weighty and very timely. And just a part of that speech did say President Tinubu urged both countries to overcome what he called irritants that hinder their collaboration and then focus on transforming Africa's global image. And I wanted to focus on the word irritants because some of those issues, xenophobia in South Africa, South African companies in Nigeria, South Africans to South Africans, just a lot of issues. How can this be addressed, in terms of those irritants? And then will this particular, the outcome of this meeting, do you see it trickling down to citizens?
In all honesty, we see a few citizens of those nations engaging in back and forth forms of conflict, which when you look at the bigger picture, South Africa and Nigerians collaborate well, they intermarry, they do businesses together. But we know, like in every country, you have it's either maybe a xenophobic attack in South Africa and some other nations, it could be racism. But you still discover that even when racism is happening, you still see governments of those countries creating opportunities for people to migrate, to get jobs, to get accommodation. So what actually is the overriding interest of the nation, which considers, okay, the relationship they have shared with a particular nation is what matters. We know xenophobic attack has been there, but for some Nigerians that dwell in South Africa, they know that displeasure from a few South Africans who feel that maybe the reason why they are not succeeding is because you have some Nigerians who are more enterprising and doing businesses and they're thriving in their own economy. They see them as their problem, which in many cases, it's not a problem because we see some people that always have that entitlement mindset all across board. So I see this actually as a bold step to tackle some of those toxic behaviors we've seen in some presidents and now make it official that the government of both nations are ready to collaborate and that the best that the citizens could do is now to do what to align. And most importantly, with some of these bottlenecks that we see taken away and the readiness to collaborate more citizens from both countries will have that privilege of getting to experience firsthand without really working on maybe some of the things they feel about those nations. And oftentimes, when you travel to a nation, you always discover that it is often different from perhaps things you've heard about those nations.
All right, let's get to Prof. Prof, because a lot of things can happen at the top that do not necessarily trickle down. And we can have all of the handshakes, at the top and just at that level where it's citizen to citizen, you realize that it is still a bit combative and a lot of conflict. I also wanted to speak to that point and then speak to the kind of investment you expect us to begin to see from both countries.
Well, thank you very much, Precious. Look, it is normal to have tensions among nationals of different countries when they coexist, when they cohabit. And then you also have to understand the history of South Africa in particular as a country that went through a lot during apartheid, and Nigeria played a critical role, don't let's forget, in contributing to South Africa becoming a republic in which all blacks now will be entitled to vote for the kind of government that they wanted in their country, and the human rights, fundamental human rights will be enthroned and so on and so forth. However, let's not forget one thing. The fact that we contributed to the emancipation, so to say, of South Africa does not give us the right to then go to that country, or any country for that matter, and not play by the rules of that country. No country is going to open its eyes to allow you to sort of do whatever you want to do. However, that does not give an excuse for xenophobia that has become a commonplace in South Africa. So our hope at this moment is that the new synergy found by South Africa and Nigeria will go a long way, and a lot of work needs to be done in ensuring that the benefits of this relationship that is being strengthened at the moment will be felt by nationals of Nigeria and South Africa. Now, having said that, the next question is, what kind of investment do we think is going to likely to grow? Well, number one is the fact that, as I said, these are two biggest economies in Africa. Nigeria has a lot to learn in terms of governance from South Africa, rule of law and some other things. South Africa is a thriving democracy, and we need to learn a lot from that. We are a democracy, no doubt about that, but we need a lot of lessons to learn from more democracies globally. But beyond that is, for instance, a green economy, marine and green economy, for instance. South Africa has a lot, to teach Nigeria in terms of also renewable energy. South Africa is a leader in renewable energy. We have a lot to learn from that, and Nigeria can benefit from that a lot. Beyond that is, for instance, lithium. Lithium is discovered in Nigeria in abundant quantity, and South Africa has signified interest in investing in lithium industry in Nigeria, and I think that is going to be very, very significant for Nigeria in terms of our earning capacity from such. But having said that, I don't think it stops only at the kind of investment opportunities that is open. Also important is for Nigeria to be able to leverage on its, on the newfound, so to say, and growing acceptability internationally to make sure we create an easy business in our country. So we look for a better relationship between Nigeria and South Africa, business-wise.
Yeah, South Africa has succeeded in escalating its own influence beyond the continent. Nigeria could really use that sort of collaboration. Thank you so much for your time. The CEO, Little Network Africa, who joined us from our Abuja studio, Chukwuma Kenwa, and a professor of international law, Ademola Abbas. Thank you both for speaking to us.
You're welcome.